So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my podcast, Girl with the Camera. And in today's episode, I have a pleasure to welcome director and writer of the film called Sticky, which I very much liked. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So welcome, Cameron Johanning. Welcome to my podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Let me just ask you if you can, for my viewers and listeners, if you can just tell briefly what Sticky is about.
Yeah, so Sticky is the story of a boarding school student who comes home. The log line that I've been going with is she comes home to find out that her favorite bakery has been baking more than sticky buns. And so, we kind of discover what that is in the film.
Can you tell me, because you also a writer of this, so is it your personal experience or what was the inspiration?
No, so it's not my personal experience, but just to give a little more context, it's about kind of discovering that you have a second family. And so we came up with this idea from a true story. It was, like a personal statement that me and my writing partner were, help with a lot of personal statements. And so we kind of borrowed some details from some of these real life experiences. And, finding out that you have a second family or, that one member of your family has another set of people that you weren't aware of actually turned out to be really common. As we were showing this film, I just kept hearing more and more people where they're like, oh, that happened to me too. And I didn't really know that it was a common thing. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate. I can relate, let's say, on 50%.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how it's possible that you got together such an amazing cast? Seriously.
The casting process was so early on, we kind of knew that this is like a kind of the script is not going to work for anybody that we throw into the roles. We need chemistry between the father-daughter, and we need kind of somewhat believable setup for the different characters and what their energy would be like, and we got a lot of over the top auditions, but ultimately we connected with the casting director who worked on Stranger Things and put that incredible cast together. And she was, willing to help us out. It was just so amazing that she was there. And so she actually assembled a lot of the auditions, and then we, saw some of them in person, and some of them we did over video. And so we got very lucky, but we thought that was the most important part of the film, was getting that cast right.
Yeah, I agree completely, because when I saw you've got Daniel Cosgrove, who I've seen on You, for example, which is right now season number 3. So, but he was in the first season. He was great. And then you have Katie Balen. She was like, whoa, I'm like, this is a talent, really. And the chemistry. So my viewers and listeners are aspiring filmmakers or the beginners. So can you tell me, how do you get in touch with those casting directors or people? How do you get them to be on board? Do you just need amazing story, or I don't know, tell me.
Yeah. Okay. It's a great question. I had the same question, before I was starting this film, because this is really my first, what I would call professional film. I did filmmaking in college, but this is the first time that I was okay, let's do it right. Let's see how we can kind of fit ourselves into the industry a little bit. And so with, in terms of landing the casting director, I had worked at a commercial production agency, for, just as an intern. I didn't have a big role or anything, but I, was made friends with the other producers in the commercial production agency. And then we worked with casting on one project. I happened to have her email. I asked her if she was available. She says, no, but I work with these other people. Let me just connect you with other people. They connected me to other people. And it was just, you just keep emailing and keep contacting people until you find something that is going to work for you. And we were just like very lucky that it did.
Like it's all about networking, like getting those contacts and people and meeting new people in the industry. Yeah, that's a good advice to.
And, on top of that, it was also, we had a script that was appealing to this casting director because most of the roles are female in this film. And, we've got some minority representation. There are things that are important to people. And if your script can reflect that, if you can appeal to the casting director's interests, then they're more likely to like want to help.
So can you tell me also a little bit of behind the scenes? So how long the filming took, like how long, couple of days or one day? And if you can, you don't have to, but if you can say the budget for this, so we can have some idea what you need to put this together.
Yeah. Right. We were on a very like tight budget for this film. At the same time, this is like kind of a calling card film. And so we did want it to meet certain standards. The cinematography was really important for me. I really wanted to, establish myself as like an aesthetic or visually appealing director. And, there's certain things that I want to make sure are part of my trajectory in my directing career. So we ended up shooting for 2 days. And that was kind of against the advice of a lot of people who thought that this really needed 3 days. And, maybe that is the case. Maybe we would have an even stronger, like more perfect film if we had, an extra day of filming. But I definitely feel like we got the story down, and I was confident that we would be able to make that happen in 2 days. Because once you get to a third day, like just generally, like for your viewers who are kind of starting films, like each day you have to not only account for labor costs, but also like location costs and catering, and the unions are part of those decisions, and how many days are you allowed to film before it becomes, categorized as a different type of project and stuff like that. So there's just like a ton of factors. For us, we kind of, made some compromises and decided that 2 days was going to work for us. The budget it was all self-funded. And I do have to admit that my co-writer and I self-funded the film and basically just like used our life savings for it. So we're broke after that. But, I think it ended up like in the very end, somewhere between 20 and 30K. Mm-hmm. So, that also accounts for renting a really nice camera, renting nice lenses, having that, we have like that overhead shot toward the end, which requires like this whole huge rig. So, we decided as we were going sort of what the budget would be, very unlike what you would really do. Try to establish a budget and then work within that. But we did it backwards.
Every shot is worth it, like also the overhead that you just mentioned, like it really gave a different angle on it. Like it was really nice. So yeah, 3 days. So what type of director are you? Do you want one scene 10 times or 100 times or one time?
Yeah. I mean, like that's actually probably one of my biggest takeaways is learning what kind of director I am. And one of those things for me was I would really rather have time to get the scene right and do it, I think we ultimately ended up doing about 3 takes per shot, except for, I think the first one where Stacy is coming down the stairs with the sticky bun. I think we did that one like on the order of like 12 or 15 times. Kind of a complicated shot. You're like moving the camera and, and the composition had to be right. You have to land in certain places. So part of that is just choreography with the camera department.
And yeah, of course, you have to think about that you have to finish certain shots today.
Yeah. You only have certain locations for a certain amount of time. And there are also child labor laws. That was a big thing for us. just because we have to be out at a certain time based on the call time for a young actor. And so, I didn't want to break any of those kinds of rules, because it really felt like it's important that, it's important to me to work within those guidelines.
That leads to my next question. So in terms of storyboard, I feel like there's a kind of like divide in between the directors that I know or talk to. So some of them completely hate it and they want, like, they have like a skeleton and then they go and do it and whatever they feel. And then the other group is that they literally draw like every little thing, every little shot, and they leave some room for improvisation, but just a little bit. So how was that in your case?
Yeah. So for me, I think that ultimately I'm like instinctually, I'm probably more of a, I don't want storyboards. But for this project, we ended up we storyboarded every single frame, which did help me to just conceptualize, like, okay, it's kind of like writing an outline for an essay or something. Like, you get to kind of see what the house is going to look like, and then you can kind of make decisions based on that. I forget who said it, but there's just this idea that having a plan is really important. Even if you're not going to stick to that plan, having something is just like, it's psychological safety. You feel like a little more relaxed on set. And so for me, it was really important to do that. Also just to figure out what I wanted, I knew what the locations looked like. So if I could just kind of like do some of that work ahead of time, maybe I could like actually come up with cooler shots. Like, there's one shot in there where we kind of follow Cassie around the car and then go into that, the side mirror through the car. And, that's the type of stuff that, I had to sit and think about that. It wasn't just like a crazy coincidence, but.
This shot, I actually, I had written it down because this was one that actually blew my mind, if I say it. Because I had to, I watched it and this was the shot, okay, I have to write this down because this was so cool. So I actually wanted to ask you about this, but now we have the answer. So yeah, really, yeah, it's beautiful. It's like an experience watching it, visually a lot. And tell me what inspired the opening. I've seen so many people talk about this, not to mention that I had to go and buy a sticky bun because I was so, I was like, oh my God, I have to have it.
You're not the only one. I've literally I think when my parents first watched it, they went to Cinnabon right away. So, I mean, yeah, I couldn't have been more happy with how that opening turned out. Funny thing about the opening is actually, it was written as, if you think about it, the story chronologically, they probably would have made that sticky bun in between the car conversation and actually arriving at the bakery. And so that's the way we'd written it, just chronologically. But the editor that I worked with, Barbara Vekerick, or Barbara Bay, as she goes in the film, is actually a very talented writer-director of her own right. And so that was her idea to switch the structure around. And I just think it worked better than I, could have imagined. So things really do change in the edit,
Yeah, exactly. And that was also I wanted to ask you how much what changed in the edit, because sometimes we just do different things. And yeah, I think this worked out very well because it was kind of like a mystery. I started watching it. I'm like, okay, so is this a film about, just making sticky buns? And then the story unfolded. And then I got it, I'm like, oh, that's the connection. So this is the moment, yeah. So also mentioning this, are you the director that takes other people's ideas, even if you have your vision, but also on set? Or you just say, no, I want it my way?
Yeah. That's definitely something that's difficult to figure out on kind of the first directorial job. Like on the one hand, I got pretty comfortable because that opening sequence was actually the very first thing that we filmed. And it was kind of day of, we were creating the shot list because I wasn't 100% familiar with all the different steps that were involved with making the sticky buns. You know, I'd been working with that patissier, but and he'd send me like videos of like, hey, here's like an example of like a sticky bun. We like made this bun just for this film, or you know, he did. And he's like fantastic. But so getting there on set and kind of deciding how to make this thing, I was craving input, but I think ultimately I came around to feeling like I needed to build a stronger connection to my own intuition. And, you know, it's kind of scary to be like spending so much money on something that, you know, may or may not like actually get into a festival and, you know, be a successful film. And so for me, it was difficult to get into that headspace and to trust like, okay, I'm doing this according to my vision and I have confidence in that vision. So it certainly was not something that was like easy to, you know, say no to outside help.
You went to a bunch of festivals. You did win a bunch of awards. So congratulations. Thanks
so much. Yeah.
So what's the kind of like, before I ask you about the future projects, you said you want to create like a beautiful visual film. So how did you pick your cinematographer?
It was actually just so serendipitous because we were looking at a lot of cinematographers and I wasn't feeling particularly like inspired by a lot of them, just because they're kind of, you know, the people that are interested in working on a project like this are probably also toward the beginning of their careers. You know, I did talk to some production companies and most of them are just like booked on commercials and, you know, doing high budget stuff. Like once you get to a certain level of cinematography, you're really well sought after. And so I found the cinematographer through, it's like a friend of a friend. And then ended up reaching out to him myself, and he just happened to have a lull in work and like we happened to hit it off really well. Josh is just so talented. And like, I think while we were in pre-production for Sticky, he started like doing NFL ads and like working with like one of the Hadids. Wow. You know, he's just absolutely blowing up. So we really got lucky with that he was available to work with us.
Do you think you will be working together again if he's available?
Definitely. It's honestly like, it was such a blessing to find some collaborators on this first film that I actually, you know, trusted and really thought like, okay, I can give this to you and feel good about that. I can focus on the, you know, the emotions of the scene and, you know, the interpersonal part of filmmaking, because I trust that Josh has got the image is going to look beautiful. It's going to be an aesthetic that I particularly think is going to work for this. We were going for that kind of summertime, harsh highlights, harsh shadows. You know, you can see in the car scene, you know, there's just like light coming in from all over the place. So sorry for my colorist who just had you know, I'm sure that was a difficult scene to correct. But you know, I could trust that it was going to look beautiful. And so that was a really, really big deal to me. And being able to connect with my intuition about the scenes was possible. And also the production designer, Ali Leone, she got my aesthetic sense.
I want to ask you, when there are people listening or watching and they have their savings and they have a story, did you, like, how many people you showed the story to, or were you just like, you came up with the story and then you had the belief before you put like, you know, I'm going to go all in, or did you show the story to some people to get some feedback, or you just took the risk and went for it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this was I had like really hardcore imposter syndrome. So I was like, I need a lot of validation on this script. I didn't write it. We didn't write it in a traditional way, like trying to map it onto like a story arc of some kind. To me, the goal was always, let's just keep it interesting at every stage of this film. My goal is to make sure that people are invested or engaged. And that's something that, I'm going to get better at over my directorial career, because it's hard to figure out if someone's attention is going to wane. But that to me was always the goal. That's what I was asking people when I sent the script to them. Do you get like bored or distracted at any point? And so, yeah, I sent it to just an absolute ton of people.
What is the next project, or are you thinking about the next project, or what's the plan?
It's such a weird time, because like we made Sticky before, the pandemic. And then when the pandemic just became a global event, we were going to only virtual festivals. And so, some festivals did the virtual thing pretty well. And I'm thinking about Filmocracy in particular. They just have like a really cool, they did like virtual rooms, and we could like talk to other filmmakers and stuff. And they just really cared about the virtual experience. But I would say for the most part, virtual festivals are really difficult to do right. And so, the goal was to kind of meet other producers, other filmmakers, and kind of start to be a part of the industry. But unfortunately, that was just like difficult to make happen. So I do have more ideas for short films, but in that interim, I ended up kind of doing a lot of more music making and exploring other mediums, which I think is a great thing to do for any artist, to kind of learn about your own craft through another craft. The next one is either going to take place in Minnesota or Ghana. We have kind of two different ideas.
Very different, yes.
So I don't know which one's going to happen first, but the first one, it would be kind of a story of how my parents met, fictionalized, some sort of like romance kind of thing. And then the other one would be more LGBT issue focused, and specifically in Ghana. And they're both kind of tearing at my attention. So I have to probably pursue both of them and then decide at some point which one is first.
Thank you so much. And I wish you good luck with everything. And again, thank you for being part of my podcast. I'm going to put the links and everything in the description so people can watch Sticky and enjoy it.
Perfect. Yeah, no, it's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening or watching as well. So if you're listening on Spotify, you can also watch this interview. But if you're listening on other platform, you can go onto my YouTube channel and see the interview together with the film Sticky, which is definitely worth it, trust me. And in the next episode, you can look forward to, I'm calling all Batman fans, because we're going to talk about the short film, which is a fan film of director Rob Eiling, and it's all about Batman. But he's also got another short film which is super personal, and it literally made me cry. So don't forget to tune in on Thursday.